Time hadn't dimmed Jaune's worry, nor had her fears telling off by Jade and Hazel. He'd been unsure what to do at the time, weighing between a decision to try and evacuate them from the store as quickly as he could, or to trust that they would be safer with more witnesses nearby. If Neo were waiting for them outside, then leaving in a panic would have meant walking into a trap. In the end, he decided not to scare his sisters, trusting in the fact that if Neo did decide to attack, then after his display at the docks, she would almost certainly go for him first. His sister's tempers had simmered down soon after, the old age of burning hot and quickly fitting the two of them very well. By the time he carried their bags back to the hotel, it had been gone entirely, left with them showing off their new clothes to Lavender and their mother. Should he have told his father? The thought had hit him when he saw his old man there, watching over his family with a contented smile. In the end, Jaune decided not to. Nicholas was a trained hunter. If something happened, then he'd be able to react better than Jaune could. He was bad at keeping a secret from his wife, however, and the knowledge would have stressed his mother out. More than that, he might have felt the need to tell the police, which Jaune knew Roman had more than a few friends within. It should have been obvious from how often Roman got away with what he did, but Jaune also knew from experience he'd met a few of them. What's wrong, little brother? Sable stepped a little closer as they walked, bumping her shoulders against his. He flinched back before he could stop himself, which only seemed to make Coral, Sapphire, and Sable look even more worried. "I'm fine," he said automatically, cursing at how fake it sounded. "Sorry, I mean, I'm just lost in my own thoughts. You know me." "You've been nervous since we left the hotel." Sapphire reached up to flick her braid, only to stop when she realized it wasn't there anymore. The old habit hadn't died yet. "You keep looking around like you're trying to find someone." "He's scanning the streets for a threat," Coral said. Not for the first time he lamented at her quick wit and sharp eyes. The girl pushed her glasses up her nose, something she did to make the lens flash in the light. "He's doing what father does when we hike to the woods, ever since that Beowulf attack at the house." Coral nodded a little lower down. "His hands keep reaching for a weapon too." It does not," Jaune argued, like the teen he wasn't sure he'd ever been. Just to prove her wrong, he shoved his hands into his pockets, but his shoulders immediately tensed as he realized how helpless that left him. She was right, of course. He was still on edge. How could he not be? Neo might still be out there at this very moment, or she might have already returned to Roman with information on where Jaune and what he was doing. That was if this was Roman's doing at all and not just Neo acting on her own, or worse, on Cinder's orders. The loops. His very advantage of being able to do this over and over was in knowing what was going to happen. No one knew what Neo wanted, however, nor what she would do in any given situation. But he didn't want to ruin his sister's experience either. Sorry. It's not anything specific, trust me. I guess this is just what a place like Beacon does to you. Maybe I'm still a little paranoid over the whole dogs thing. Trust me, if I thought there was danger, I'd have brought my sword, right? He hadn't, but only because that might have prompted Neo to attack with her own, if she were even still close by. He hadn't seen or felt anything, but then again, this was Neo. She knew how to remain hidden if she wanted to. She had simply underestimated him at first. "I suppose," Sapphire accepted his excuse with a grimace. "I felt much the same after the attack. It felt like weeks had passed before I was able to stop looking at every bush, every tree line in fear." Sad. He hadn't meant to bring that up. Not like this. Now that he thought about it, his sisters looked a little stronger, somehow more solid in life, walking with a grace that didn't quite reveal a hunter, but what might have been considered athletic for a civilian. "It's fine." She waved her hand with a bitter laugh. "I'm over it now. It's all in the past." The past. What a term to someone like him. The Beowulf had happened because of him, as far as he was able to tell, because he dared to try and change the past. Jaune still had no idea whether that was something related to fate, bad luck, or consequence, but the latter did make sense. He hadn't done anything big enough to cause that. The horrifying thought had plagued him for a while. Had that attack happened in his past lives? Had his mother been forced to give her life because he wasn't there to save her? In the future, he would watch out for it. He would remain with his family and make sure that never occurred. Okay, enough of this morbid stuff. A hand slapped against Jaune's ass, making a mighty crack and causing him to jump in shock. Sapphire did the same, because for some reason, Coral had felt the need to slap her ass too. If Beacon's making you all twitchy and jumpy, then it's our responsibility to help you relax and calm down. Both of you. You tell him. Sable laughed at the twins' antics. It was easy to laugh at Coral when her attention was pointed away from him. It was just a shame that for him, it so rarely was. Jaune sighed and held up his arms. Fine, I won't argue, he said. I'm supposed to be entertaining you guys, but I'm doing a very poor job of it. Do you have any ideas what you want to do? I know my way around Vale fairly well. No need for that, my love. Coral grinned and pecked his cheek, making him flush and his sister's stammer. I said we need to do something that will help us both relax, which means it needs to be something that will remind you of home. I have just the idea. Coral's idea was not what Jaune would have expected, though given who it came from, maybe he should have. His eyes stared too long at the legs of a waitress who passed by, in a skirt that even a stripper would have called a squeak. Just to make sure it wasn't Neo in disguise, Jaune made sure to pay attention to the way her rear end swayed from side to side. Yeah, that was definitely the reason. Jaune! Sapphire clapped him around the back of the head before turning to the grinning girl opposite her. Coral, I can see why a place like this might appeal to our perpetual horny brother, but would you mind explaining why I might feel at home here? Here being a small cafe where women dressed in scantily clad maid outfits served drinks and food. Jaune hadn't even been aware one existed within Vale. Though given the location of a main street and down an alley, he supposed he could be forgiven. He was more impressed that his sister knew. Coral smirked at the oldest of their siblings. Why? I simply thought that you being the stern and critical older sister would make everyone feel like we're at home, she said. Sable smothered a laugh. You're difficult to put up with, Sapphire sighed. As usual. Oh, whatever. It's not like they're getting naked or anything. She paused to glare out from between her fingers. Right? Nothing that bad. Coral smirked. I only heard about it from a fan of my writings. Someone who said it's a place with good service and a nice view. Jaune snorted. No prizes for guessing what the person had meant by that. It's all perfectly legal and moral, don't worry. And we all know how easily our brother relaxes around a nice pair of breasts. Jaune rolled his eyes but didn't argue, picking up the menu instead. He let out a low whistle at what he saw. This food is really expensive. It wasn't even proper food, more like sweets, desserts, and cakes. All at prices at least 2 or 3 times higher than anything else. You pay for the experience. Why do I have the suspicion I'll be the one paying for the experience? It's tradition for the man to pay on a date. His sister smirked. For once, the other two didn't argue, likely because they'd seen the prices as well and realized it would have been out of their budget. Jaune sighed. Thank God for Juniper stocking him up on some line before he left, patting his pocket and saying it was to help him bribe his sisters into forgiving him. Right. Never let it be said I don't do anything nice for you all. Jaune said, ignoring the "but you don't" that came from Sable. He held one hand in the air, face still looking down at the menu on the table. You girls decide what you want. I'll order. Sweets weren't normally his cup of tea, and he wasn't hungry either. But at the same time, he knew they'd only be worried if he didn't have something. Sorbet, perhaps? That came in small sizes. Hello. Can I take your order? Jaune hummed as he glanced to the left, taking a second to admire the long and smooth legs besides the table. They were athletic and lean, sculpted in a way that only someone used to intense exercise could achieve. His eyes tailed a little higher, to a fist that desperately tried to tug the skirt at a lower level, even if it did very little and it still left a lot of her thighs on display. Their outfits were really well made, even he could tell, with black and white flowing together in little triangles to better show off the waitress's figure. He'd have considered that more if his eyes didn't stop at her stomach, though it wasn't because of anything he saw. It was because the woman had started to choke. "Are you okay?" Jaune looked up at her face, noticing the distress there. He blinked once. He looked down at the menu, narrowed his eyes, shook his head, then looked back. Nothing had changed, except for the fact that it looked like the poor girl was about to drop in horror. "Oh," he said uselessly, because what else was he supposed to say? "Hey, Blake." This could not be happening. It was, which made it all the worse. But at the same time, it just couldn't be. The world had not been so cruel. Life could not have been so unfair. Faunus suffered. Grim crept across the continents. And now this? "Hey, Blake," he said, as though there was nothing unusual about the situation. As though he didn't even find the image of her in the sluttiest outfit she had ever seen standing before him like this the slightest bit unusual. He saw all of that and all he could say was, "Hey, Blake." She could feel heat creeping up her bare arms now, reaching to her shoulders which had nothing more than thin, white cloth covering them. Embarrassment didn't even begin to describe what she felt, nor did humiliation. This was death, without the actual act of dying. "Can I take your order?" Blake repeated, desperately hoping that if she acted professionally, and what a joke that would be in this place, then he might somehow not actually connect the dots. Maybe he would think he imagined it, that it was someone else who just appeared to look exactly the same. "You know this girl?" One of the women with him asked. She hadn't even paid attention to them, not with the personification of doom sat before her. Seeing him with 3 women wasn't unusual. What was, however, was the way he didn't make any move to flirt with them. The one who had spoken looked at Blake with a considering expression, bright eyes set behind a pair of rimmed glasses. That look made Blake feel naked. She hated that girl in particular immediately. "We've never..." Blake tried to say. "She's my teammate," Jaune said, without even a pause. "She's called Blake. Her partner's Yang, the blonde." And there went any hope of fading away and pretending she had no idea what he was talking about come beacon. Oh gods. What if Yang found out? "I didn't know you worked here," he said. "When did that happen?" 2 hours ago. Blake growled, keeping her voice low in case her boss overheard her. This is my first shift, so if Jaune could politely leave and forget he'd ever seen her, she could move on. And that explains why you're trying to drag your skirt down to reach your knees. He nodded at her legs, which she crossed angrily when she caught him looking. She would have liked to slap him except for the fact that she was supposed to show them off. It was part of the job. I'm not used to it yet, nor would she ever be. Can I take your order already? No way! The girl she hated grinned. You need to sit down and tell us about you and Jaune at Beacon. The other two nodded, though they didn't quite smile. Sit down and talk to them? Sure, that was only maybe the last thing she wanted right now. Sadly, I'm on the job so I can't You can if I order this, the blonde girl said, pointing to something on the menu. Blake tried to look at it but couldn't quite see. Her first instinct was to lean forward, but Jaune coughed and pointed discreetly behind her. There was a man there, watching her rear end with an almost determined expression. If she bent over? Yeah, no. She snatched Jaune's menu instead, looking at what the girl had pointed to. Super Made Sunday Special. It read, a delicious mix of fresh strawberries, vanilla ice cream and whipped cream, served by our ever most delicious maids. Experience the ultimate experience of sitting back while one of our beautiful waitresses hand feeds you. There was a picture of a happily smiling maid sat on a man's lap, holding out a spoon. The girl looked far happier than Blake felt. No, not a chance. Not in this world or the next. But if we order it, don't you have to do it? The hated one asked. Blake's teeth ground together. She needed the job. There weren't many places that would hire Faunus, even less so Faunus without any kind of work history and for such a short time. She glanced back towards Jaune, just to see his reaction. He wasn't leering, thankfully. She was getting closer to him, at least as a teammate and a friend. But that didn't mean she wasn't painfully aware of his reputation, which she knew to be 100% true. We'll take one supermade sundae, a banana split, and 2 cheesecakes. The girl must have taken Blake's silence as an answer. And I'll complain if it isn't you who does it. Why is it that life only ever became more annoying since I met you, Jaune? That was the thought that ran through Blake's mind as she placed the assorted desserts down on the table. A large one put down before her leader. He wouldn't eat it all. She knew that. Most of it would probably go to waste, pushed around his plate like the world's pickiest eater. Blake turned and sat down beside him, making sure to hold her skirt down as she did, just to deny anyone a chance to peek. Jaune's legs blocked the overweight man from earlier, but that did leave Blake with one of her bare legs pressed against his. No fair. You have to sit on his lap. I don't. Blake smiled in a victory. I asked my boss. He says the image was for marketing purposes only. I just have to feed him. And that was a task she would get through as quickly as she could, so that she didn't have to put up with the humiliation any further. Gripping the spoon in one hand, she forced it into the sundae, picking up a generous proportion and holding it before her. Are you going to open your mouth or what? I don't know, Jaune said slowly, leaning back with a nervous expression on his face. He had every right to be worried, since she was not only glaring at him, but wielding the spoon like a spear. Will I survive you? He flinched as she drove the spoon into his mouth. She couldn't believe she was even doing this. So you're one of Jaune's teammates? The tallest of the girls asked. She had dark blue eyes and short cropped blonde hair, rather roughly cut. Blake instantly knew she was his sister because in all honesty, she looked just like Jaune might have if he were a woman, except less of a lazy asshole. I am. Blake nodded as she used the opportunity of Jaune trying to speak to force some more ice cream down his throat. The girl with the glasses giggled happily and took a picture on her scroll. But the important thing was that he wasn't having any perverted thought about this, even if their legs were so close that her knees knocked against his. She kept an eye on his hands, just to make sure. And you girls are? Sapphire Arc, the tall one nodded. I'm Jaune's oldest sister. Thank you for looking out for him. Blake wasn't sure how to respond to that, particularly since she had done nothing but try to avoid or ignore him. Until, conversely, it had been he who had saved her life. That had only just marked the turnaround in their relationship, but less than a week of a tentative new friendship was not enough to make up for this indignation. That Sable Arc, also his sister. The one with the glasses grinned. Not a friendly expression, rather that of someone who felt they had some very big secret. One that they were about to unload just at that moment. And my name's Coral. I'm sure you've heard of me. Coral? Blake's eyes widened, even more so when she realized what situation she was in front of his intended no less. Her arm jerked, Jaune groaning slightly as she accidentally rattled the spoon against his teeth. Why this woman, this Coral, would put her fiancé through this kind of treatment, Blake had no idea. Unless, was she as casual about things as he was? Was his constant sleeping around less rebellion and more of a kink between the two? Oh gods. Was she being used as foreplay between them? Carl, be nice, Jaune said, rubbing his jaw as Blake let the spoon slip free. His eyes were still wide when he turned to talk to her. Why are you working here, Blake? It's clear you're not comfortable doing this. Maybe that's because it's you, Jaune. Coral laughed. It is. Blake replied instantly, and she meant it too. With anyone else, she might have been able to switch off, to pretend it wasn't happening or comfort herself with the idea that no one had to know. You cannot tell anyone about this. I won't. I won't. He held his hands up before him. It wasn't until she noticed where he was looking that Blake realized she was holding the spoon towards him, like one might a knife. Coughing awkwardly, she went back to the sundae. Killing a customer would probably be a bad idea, even if he totally deserved it. You didn't answer my question though. This is a holiday. Why are you working in this sleazy cafe? Why do you think? Blake snapped. Do you think I want to do this? Did I want to have people looking at me like I'm a piece of meat? I don't exactly have a home, family, or rich company behind me. She regretted the words the moment she uttered them, mostly because of the way the girls looked at her, but also because of how his eyes widened. You don't have anywhere? Blake looked away, unwilling to answer that question. She didn't need his pity, nor his sympathy. She'd never had anywhere, not since she'd been a little child shouting at protests. That didn't mean she needed help though. She had gotten through life and now had become a huntress. This was just a temporary problem. Doesn't Beacon have any place for their students to stay if they have nowhere else to go? The older Sapphire asked. She leaned forward at the table, banana split forgotten as she frowned at Blake. It seems terribly irresponsible of them to just throw you out to Vale like this. Blake blinked and looked towards Jaune, who shrugged back before answering his sister. It's a Beacon thing, he said. You should see what they do to new students. Vale is probably considered tame by comparison. Actually, part of me wouldn't be surprised if they graded our ability to handle ourselves in the city. He shook his head with a little laugh. Still, you never told me that you had to work to survive during the holidays. Never. The last bit was whispered, something she only caught because of her acute hearing. Why would I have told you? She asked, crossing her arms defensively. It's not like we talked much. It never came up. He jerked slightly, looking at her with a faraway expression. Of course. Of course. I'm just mumbling. Don't mind me. I need this job to cover the rent on my apartment I'm staying at. The pay here isn't great, but you can make a lot on tips. She pointedly stared at Jaune as she said that, tilting her head a little. I get the hint. He rolled his eyes. I'll tip well, I promise. Jeez. You two seem comfortable with one another. His sister Sable laughed. It's weird seeing Jaune actually talk casually with someone who isn't part of the family. Comfortable? The two of them. Blake gave him a look only for him to do the same. Both of them somehow having the exact same thoughts. Was this girl even watching them? She would not have described their current situation as comfortable. Sable's right, you know. The older one leaned forward. Jaune doesn't so much as acknowledge the existence of people outside our family, not unless he's under the sheets with them. For him to even talk to you, let alone tease or express concern? It's honestly surprising, and something she was relieved about, if her expression was anything to go by. Blake wasn't convinced, however. Concern? Teasing? Okay. She could admit that sometimes his lines and Beacon were specific enough that only he could be taking the piss out of them. But he did that with everyone to a degree. especially Weiss. As for concern, he didn't care. A flash. Orange hair, fire, explosions and pain. Blake's eyes clenched shut as her breathing became heavy. That was right. He did care. For some reason she couldn't understand. He cared enough to kill on her behalf. It's decided then. The blonde-wearing blonde stood up. You're only working here because you have to. You're also a friend of Jaune, and he's actually started to calm down since you arrived. You're coming with us. Pardon? Blake looked around for answers, but the others at the table seemed just as confused. I can't come with you. I have a shift to work, and she was cut off as the girl placed a finger before her lips, stealing the spoon from Blake's hand and licking the ice cream off. Blake's eyes widened at the indirect kiss between Jaune and this girl. She seemed to notice, smirking evilly and running her tongue along the utensil. You only have to work here because you need food and a place to stay. We can take those issues away. Stay at our hotel with us for the week. Then you won't have to do this. I couldn't, Blake answered immediately. Thank you for the offer, but I will be fine. I can look after myself. And I'm sure you can, the girl grinned. But this way wouldn't involve selling your body for line. How long do you think it would be before someone orders this meal? Except that they demand you sit on their lap. Maybe let them stroke your legs too. I wouldn't let them. Blake's face twisted at the thought of it. She needed line, but she wasn't like that. She would go back to stealing to survive rather than degrade herself in that manner. She didn't want to pickpocket innocent people either, but it would be better than the alternative. Then again, neither would be necessary if she accepted their offer. No. She wasn't staying with them. She didn't need handouts. It's not about letting them. If you're as strong as Jaune, then I doubt they would have a chance against you. But they'll touch first and apologize after. We're staying in Vale anyway. We already have rooms and food. Why not make use of them? Our rooms are already quite cramped, Sable warned. There's barely space to sleep on the floor. She can share Jaune's, Coral shot back. She's probably used to it. Blake bit her lip but didn't argue. She was used to it, of course. They shared a room for a couple of months now. Without Yang nearby, it would probably even be a fairly quiet night's sleep. The thought of it was enticing. It would probably be so much warmer than her ratty, insect-infested apartment too. And she would be able to eat real food, as opposed to what she could find in the expired discount section at the local store. But what about my pride? Blake thought. What about it? Her mind fired back. We're already teammates, so it's not like we're not supposed to rely on one another occasionally. Not that rely and Jaune ever went well together. Other than in that sentence, you could rely on Jaune to fight dirty, or you can rely on Jaune to fall asleep in class. Just accept it. The words barely reached her ears. She looked towards him, sitting there with a blank expression, not quite meeting her eyes but instead looking somewhere behind her or over her shoulder. Pardon? It won't cost us anything. He sighed and looked into her eyes at last. He looked tired, in a way he often did when he woke up in the morning. But more than that, he also looked a little fatigued, like he was running on fumes. Had something happened? You can pay me back by doing some of my homework for me. Homework that he just wouldn't hand in. She almost asked. Still, the idea of a deal wasn't a bad one. She could pay him back for it, in which case she was just trading rent on one apartment for rent paid in a different manner for a better room and food too. Plus, she wouldn't have to wave her ass around in some skimpy outfit. Alright, she finally said. Golden eyes closed as the three girls made approving sounds. But just to make things clear, we will decide how much of your work I do for you once we're back in Beacon. Fine with me, he said, with just a tiny smile tugging at the corner of his lips. Why did he have to be so smug about it? She wiped it off his face by jamming the spoon back into his gob, nearly making him choke on the half-melted treat. She left it hanging there, suspended from his lips as she climbed to her feet. Give me a minute to talk with my boss. I'll tell him the work didn't agree with me and then get changed. I'd rather die than walk through Vale dressed like this. Shame. Blake closed her eyes as she walked away, pretending she didn't hear his last sentence. That outfit looks good on you. That asshole. Blake could be so typical at times. It was both something he loved and hated about her, but it did make tricking her into things a little easier. She was proud and stubborn, almost enough to rival Weiss, though she would have clawed his eyes out had she ever overheard that opinion. They were prideful in different ways, neither of which were incoherently cruel or evil. Offer to help Blake and she would panic. Jaune didn't know if it was her past, he didn't know much of it, even when the two of them had been steady lovers. She was mysterious like that, always smiling and silencing him with her lips, never willing to talk about what life as a child had been like for her. Had people offered her charity then too? Only to take it back at the last second, to demand something in return. If so, then he would probably never know. All it meant was that if you wanted to convince Blake to accept your help, then you needed to phrase it as some kind of mutual agreement. So she felt you had some ulterior motive, one that she could see plainly. For a man as lazy and irresponsible as he, doing his homework for him was probably all too easy to swallow. Jaune sighed as his sisters chatted excitedly between themselves. He hadn't even known about this aspect of Blake, which was actually a little disheartening given how long they'd known one another. Not for the single semester she recalled, but all the ones before as well. Again, it was so very Blake. If she was in trouble or needed help, then she would never be the one to ask for it. And what made it worse for him was the small, selfish voice that protested the idea of this arrangement at all. He squashed it down angrily, hating the mere fact that it existed. Because in truth, he didn't want to introduce Blake to his family. He didn't want her anywhere near them. Not because he didn't trust her. He was sure she wouldn't purposely put them in danger, but more because of what it represented. The melding between the two distinct aspects of his lives that he wanted to keep separate. Jaune the hunter, forced into Beacon against his will, and Jaune the son, the brother and normal person who he wanted to be. But if Blake was in trouble, then he had to help. Ready? She said once she came back to them, now in her usual combat outfit once more. It was a little more tattered than usual, and the fact that she only had Gembel's shroud as her luggage told him it was all she had brought. That made sense, he supposed. Why take luggage outside of Beacon if you had nowhere to put it? They were okay with me leaving early, so long as I don't take any pay. Apparently a lot of girls decide at the last minute that this is not for them. I can see why. Sapphire frowned like the mother figure she so often was. Jaune half expected that had they been able, she would have forced every single person here to come and stay at their hotel, just on the off chance they were in the same situation as Blake. Most of them looked fairly content. Maybe it just took a certain kind of person. Jaune had to admit, however, as they walked down the street with his sisters plying Blake with questions, he did feel a little less panicky with her nearby. It would be another set of eyes to keep watch. Blake barely knew what to think. In her mind, when she thought of the Ark family, she thought of people who might have raised Jaune. That made her imagine the kind of family life that he could have grown up in to actually make him what he was today. With how stunted he seemed, emotionally as well as academically, she had imagined a fairly lax and uncaring environment. Maybe one where he passed over in favor of other people, or where the parents didn't have much impact in his life. She didn't expect to be dragged into a hug almost immediately by a beautiful, blonde woman, nor for her to do the same to Jaune a moment later, squishing the two together. "Of course she could stay," the woman said, squeezing them. Blake's cheek was pushed up against her teammates, which she made sure to glare at him for. He didn't look embarrassed or surprised, however. He looked resigned, like this was an everyday occurrence. "I'm so proud of you for looking after your teammate like this. You're such a little sweetheart." "Yes, Mom," He sighed. "I've heard so much about you two." The woman, Juniper if she recalled, cried. Blake shot Jaune another look at that, wondering just what he'd been telling his mother about them all. It was probably nothing good knowing him. "What's ours is yours." Including our brother, apparently. Someone complained. "You can call me Juniper, June, or just Mother if you want." Mrs. Ark. Blake coughed as she tried to escape herself from the woman's surprisingly powerful grip. "I appreciate your offer and thank you for letting me stay. I promise I won't cause any trouble." "Oh, nonsense. A friend of Jaune's is a friend of ours. He has so few." That she could easily believe, though it probably wouldn't have been diplomatic to say that to his mother. "I hope he hasn't been causing you any trouble. I know what he can be like." "None at all," Blake lied. Again. She wasn't going to tell his mother of all things what it was he got up to. That would probably be a quick way to land herself in hot water, not only with the woman, but Jaune too. Blake doubted very much this kind woman knew what Jaune was really like. "So, this is my husband Nicholas, or Nicky. You've met Sapphire, Sable, and Coral. These are John's sisters, Lavender, Hazel, Jade, and Amber." Blake tried to memorize the names and faces, but it was a lost cause. Them all fading together into a jumbled mess in her head. Instead, she prepared herself for a difficult week of referring to everyone with various pronouns and smiled politely at them. "Say hi, girls." "Hello, Blake. Nice to meet you." "Hi, I guess." "Meh." Jaune coughed awkwardly, while Blake could only spare him a dirty look. Somehow the awkward situation was his fault, even if it was her that 3 out of the 4 glared at. Only one looked like she was remotely pleased to see Blake even breathing. "Have you eaten? Oh, you're so thin. Have you been getting enough vitamins?" "Jaune, you did stop to get her some food, didn't you?" Blake could only blink at the rapid-fire questions, while still being crushed against her side. Jaune sighed. "Yes, Mom. We stopped for some sandwiches. I brought Blake a tuna melt. And what a good one it had been after a long day of leftover scraps from that blasted cafe he had served. Just another thing Jaune was banned from ever telling their team about. How she'd groaned blissfully over her food, nearly fainting at the table. "Good boy," Juniper praised, as though talking to a dog. "Now Blake, don't hesitate to ask for anything while you're here. Why, you're practically part of the family already." Thank you." It was a little too much for her. Not only the settlement, but the sheer happiness behind it. This was the woman who had given birth to Jaune Ark. Had she accidentally kept all the positive emotions she was supposed to give him? "I'll pay you back for this. I swear." "There's no need for that. Girls, why don't you all head back to your rooms for the night? Nicky, can you go fetch me a snack? Jaune, go run your teammate a warm bath. She must be tired." To Blake's surprise, no one argued. Not even Jaune. He had simply nodded and slipped out of her hold, walking out of the door to apparently do as asked and prepare Blake a bath. She didn't expect to see it, since this was Jaune they were talking about, so he'd fall asleep surely, before doing any of that. But still, Jaune. Doing things. Following instructions. Weiss's mind must have been blown. And then, all of a sudden, she was alone with his mother. "Now that things are a little quieter, how about we have a real talk? Just between the two of us?" the woman asked, the smile not quite gone, but a little subdued. Blake found herself unable to look away from those emerald eyes. Of course." She didn't have any reason to be nervous. Jaune and her were nothing more than teammates, not to mention she was a huntress. Even if only in training, this was just a normal woman. That didn't change the fact that she was nervous, however, nor did it stop Blake swallowing loudly as the woman let go of their hug and backed away. "How can I help you, Mrs. Ark?" "You are the girl my son risked his life for. Are you not? Oh, gods. Blake's face went white, words failing her for a moment as she tried to think what she was supposed to say. How did one explain to a mother then their son had nearly been killed because of them? Was this what it felt like to tell a family member your poor decisions had gotten someone killed? I suppose you must be with a reaction like that. Well, yes, but... A hand touched her cheek, making her freeze as the older woman touched her. I wonder what it is my son sees in you. Despite the insult in the words, the woman's face was filled with curiosity, maybe even a little awe. Please, don't misunderstand. My son is alive and well, so I don't hate you. Nor am I angry that he's become close with you. On the contrary, I was thrilled to hear how he has made friends. Casual encounters with women are far and few between with him. But to see him actually care about you? That's new. Hadn't his sisters said the same thing? I don't know what to say. Not in regards to the docs or her questions about Jaune. Blake didn't know what to say to any of them, and so that was all she said. She had no idea why he had done all that for her at all. And if his own mother didn't know, the chances of finding out was slim. I suppose not. Juniper Ark sighed and let go of Blake's cheek, sitting down on the bed with an exhale of breath. This is not the first time, you know. The first time what? The woman smiled sadly. The first time he has nearly given his life for someone. Blake looked away, unsure what she was supposed to feel other than the uneasy bubbling in her stomach. Accidents happened in the life of a hunter, but something about the way she said it made it clear that this wasn't an accident, that Jaune had willingly made the same choice he had with her. There was a woman once before, his mother went on, one that was too weak to defend herself when a Beowulf found them. Neither Jaune nor this woman had aura, nor did they have any training between them. Blake closed her eyes. It was a nightmare scenario and one all too common across Remnant. The lives of civilians were supposed to be peaceful, and for the most part they were. But it only took 1 second for that to change. One moment in which a Grim found them. To an unarmed civilian with no aura, even a lowly Beowulf must have seemed like some kind of invincible monster. Do you know what happened to them? Juniper Ark asked. I can imagine. Blake let out a quiet sigh. Was that why he was so distant from people? Because he had lost someone in his life? That might explain how cynical he was, how jaded and distant. Who was this woman? A friend? A lover? At the age he must have been, that seemed unlikely, but this was Jaune they were talking about. Juniper smiled and held her arms wide. It was me. Then you escaped. You got away. A miracle in its own right, considering how fast Beowulfs could be, but certainly the safest option for civilians. We did not. Juniper interrupted Blake's thoughts, a bitter smile still in place. Our home was attacked and we sought refuge in the basement, trapped in there alone. I chose to distract the Grim so that my children could escape. She recounted the tale so casually, so easily, that Blake couldn't help but shiver. Parents across the world had made such sacrifices again and again, yet to hear it from someone in front of her was shocking. It worked, as expected. The Beowulf focused entirely on me while my children escaped. But not Jaune, Blake whispered. Not Jaune. The woman agreed. He escaped with the others initially, but tricked his older sister into going on without him. He then came back for me. He had no weapon. He had no training. He had no aura. Yet he lives. Blake had a suspicion as to how, but her mind wouldn't accept it. That cold, logical part of her body that screamed it was impossible. That it could not have happened that way. He lives. Juniper confirmed. As do I. The Beowulf did not. Jaune fell upon it like a beast himself, throwing his small body at it until it nearly killed him. He even grabbed a steel gas pipe from the wall, one that burned so hot it left the palm of his hand burned and scarred. Over and over he struck it. She made a gesture with one hand, until it eventually, the grim fell. And? Blake paused to swallow. And he came out okay? No. His mother smiled. No, he did not. There was a long pause between them, during which Blake waited for her to continue the tale. Yet she never did. In the end, the woman sighed. And now he's shown that he is willing to do the same. Except it is for someone he's only known for a little while. Perhaps you can understand why I'm so desperate to know about you. Blake could, but at the same time, one thing tore at her. Why tell me all of this? She asked. Her voice was even, but it was hard. The air in the room seemed to close in on her until it felt like she was struggling to draw breath. You could have asked me questions without giving me all of this. So why? My son. The woman's voice cracked. To Blake's horror, she saw tears in her eyes. Not the great, wrecking, sobbing kind of tears, but rather the hopeless sort that lingered, for a person who had felt pain from a long time ago and simply come to accept it. There is something wrong with my son. She continued. I love my son, and I love him more for every day I'm alive to spend with my husband and my children. But that doesn't change the fact that something is wrong with him. Something I cannot help him with. There's not a person in this family who doesn't realize it, except for maybe Jaune himself. We all love him. We will never stop loving him. And yet we are all frightened. I'm sorry. Jaune saw something in you. I'm not sure what it is. But come the moment he decided that your death was unacceptable, that he would rather die than live in a world where you did not, Blake's heart hammered in her chest, from fear and panic, made all the worse when the woman's hand touched her cheek once more. I don't know whether that's a good or bad thing. Maybe it could be what helps him. Maybe not. Juniper whispered. But I do know one thing, Blake Belladonna. The hand tightened, nails digging into her skin as Blake's golden eyes were forced to meet the coldest green eyes she had ever seen. If you harm my son, whether through action or intention, there will be no place in Remnant you can hide from my family. Civilian. The word popped into Blake's mind. Harmless, civilian, normal person, no threat. Green eyes bored directly into her mind, making her feel weak and hopeless. I would never do that to him. She managed to get out, even if it was difficult. The heavy presence vanished almost instantly, as did the woman's tears, though the red tracks remained. The smile was back once more, wide and familiar, but Blake didn't let it fool her this time. Juniper Ark was intimidating. No, scratch that. Miss Goodwitch was intimidating. This woman was terrifying. Good. She laughed. I didn't think you would, but the warning is there. Now go. Shoo. Jaune should have your bath ready by now, and if he doesn't, make sure to send him to me. Blake nodded, and stepped back, all too eager to escape the room and get back to somewhere more comfortable. Even it was within sleeping distance of her most irritating teammate. And one thing, dear. She froze by the door, but turned to look around at the woman nonetheless. No anger. No rage. Juniper looked more amused than anything. Maybe a little exasperated too. Yes? We are in the room to the left, while some of Jaune's sisters are in the one to his right. I know it can be hard, but do try not to make too much noise if you can. That won't be a problem. I promise. Blake said with a little confusion. Juniper nodded as Blake let herself out of the door. It wouldn't be an issue. Not since Yang was the loudest by far and Jaune actually slept in almost complete silence. Blake wasn't sure about herself, but no one had complained. So that meant she was either fine or that just Yang was so loud no one even noticed. She liked to think it was the former. My mother didn't ply you for embarrassing stories on me, did she? Jaune asked as she entered the room. He wore a lopsided grin, one that didn't quite reach his eyes, but seemed honest enough. Blake stared at him for a second, making him wince. That bad, huh? If she said anything too awkward, then just ignore it. She's a mother. That's how she gets her entertainment. I see. She didn't. But neither did he, since he clearly thought nothing untoward had happened. She remembered Juniper's words, that everyone seemed to realize except for Jaune himself. Was this what she had meant? So, the bath. Through there. He nodded towards a white panelled door. I left it steaming hot and grabbed you some spare pajamas from Hazel for you to wear. You're similar builds as far as I can tell. Thank you. True to his word, the tub was filled with hot water, steam rising above it, with a fluffy white towel and some clothing lay on the side nearby. She inspected them briefly, just to make sure it wasn't some terrible prank that would see her in lingerie. In truth, it was more like what she had seen Ruby wearing, pajamas that consisted of soft, flannel trousers in a shade of dark red, with a grey t-shirt for the top. Locking the door behind her, she peeled off her crinkled, dirty clothing, slowly lowering herself into the water with a long sigh. It was easy to take such luxuries for granted, until you lost them. For a good 5 minutes she refused to move, not wanting to dirty the water by washing herself, but rather to languish in its warm embrace as the stresses and strains in her muscles slowly ebbed away. Eventually the water began to cool. However, after a little whine of protest, and a brief thought of running it anew, Blake sat up and reached for some soap, scrubbing at her long legs. There should have been something risque in thinking about a man while she bathed, especially since she knew he waited in the next room. There had been a few scenes like this in her novels, though if that were the case, he would have pushed open the door at that moment, walking in with a confident smile and nothing else. Luckily, she locked that, and, even though she doubted he would have, it was impossible not to think of him. And even when she did, it didn't feel improper. All she could recall was that his mother had said, and how he acted with his family, how it differed from the way he was in Beacon. Or was it just the way he acted in Beacon? It was hard to tell, since the Jaune from Beacon would never have rushed to the docks to try and save her. Yet there he'd been in her hour of need, just like he had with his mother. And what did that say about Blake? That he would rush to save her as he had the woman who raised him. Should she feel embarrassed? She pressed a hand to her left breast, feeling her heartbeat beneath the skin. It was slow, not hammering away like it might have for a woman in her stories. If anything, she felt confused and adrift, uncertain of what she should do but also burdened by the knowledge that her actions might cause him injury, or worse. Blake? His voice came through the door, followed by a brief knock. She realized with a start that it had been at least 20 minutes since she had entered, a time frame normally only reserved for Yang. I'm awake. She called back, just in case he thought she had fallen asleep in the water. Give me a second. Her hair was soaked, and it only took a few minutes to lather shampoo onto it and rinse it clean. The towel he left for her was soft and warm, fresh from a radiator and a wonderful sensation as the cool air touched her skin. She made sure to towel her hair as dry as possible, though it still remained lank and damp as she slipped into the pajamas he had provided. The top was a little tight, testament to the differences in bust between her and his sister. It rode up a little, showing the tiniest bit of her toned stomach. Not enough to be concerned over. Her normal yukata could have been considered more revealing. Sorry about that, she said as she emerged once more, noting the confused look on his face. No worries. I just didn't want to turn the lights off without you. Trust him to want to get to sleep as soon as possible. The thought made her smirk a little, if only because of how comfortably familiar it was. The sun shone, grass grew, and Jaune craved sleep like he'd been deprived of it all his life. "I'd hate to cost you any." Blake shook her head as she pushed past him, only to pause at the sight that greeted her. There's only one bed. A double bed, one side of which had the blankets pulled down on it, the other untouched. She looked around frantically, noticing that not only was there no other single bed to see, but no couch either. "Why am I sharing a room with you if there's only one bed? You didn't realize?" He laughed. Forgive her for not have noticing something, but her thoughts had been a little muddled with the absolute raft of things Juniper had just told her. She spun to stare at him, arms on her hips. "Explain. Why would your mother and father agree to this? Wouldn't they think it improper?" "You heard Coral, right?" he asked. "She did say you were probably used to sharing a room with me." "As teammates, yes," Blake hissed. His smile seemed to grow wider, more shit-eating. Any sympathy she had previously felt for him shriveled and died. "I don't think she ever said that. You might want to think back to how you first met my family." "First met?" "On the train," he hinted, when it was clear she hadn't caught his meaning. Her eyes narrowed for a second as she recalled it, the way he challenged Adam, how even then he had saved her from a Schnee druid. Had she written that off as a fluke? It seemed so obvious, but now also how it ended, with her leaving the White Fang, with her sneaking into Vale, with her standing next to a naked Jean Arc. "At least make my son work for it." His mother had said that at the time. Blake's face fell onto her hands, a long groan slipping through her fingers. "They think we're sleeping with one another? No, they think we're having sex." Jaune corrected with a grin. "Thank you, Jaune. I did get that implication." She growled. "I don't need you to spell it out for me." Great. Just fantastic. This was exactly what she needed to top off her day. Without even looking at him, she stalked over to the bed, pulling back the covers on the unused side and crawling in. She then reached behind her to the huge pile of pillows and cushions arranged there. They soon became the foundations of a wall between the two parts of the bed. "What are you doing?" "This is the border between our lands. If you cross it, I will count that as a declaration of war. If you think of crossing it, I will count that as a declaration of war. If you so much as breathe onto my side." She trailed off, making her point clear with bright eyes that could see as perfectly in the dark as the light. He rolled his eyes, but wisely chose not to argue. Slipping into the bed on the other side, she tensed as she felt the mattress flex beneath his weight. More so when she felt him settling in. It was awkward, surreal, something she was neither used to nor prepared for. It stopped soon after, however, and the wall between them remained strong. "Good night," he whispered, turning over so that he faced away from her, sleeping on his side. Blake did the same in the opposite direction, laying one hand under her head. "Good night," Blake responded, forcing her eyes shut and trying to keep her breathing calm. Really, it was just like being back at Beacon, except that instead of a few feet of floor space between their beds, it was only a few inches of pillow. She could get used to it. It would be fine. His mother's parting comment came back to her. "We're in the room to the left, while some of Jean's sisters are on to his right. I know it can be hard, but do try to not make too much noise if you can." "God damn it."